Let's just go from leg to leg and just try and spread the legs a little bit. So we want to use riding horse as a posture to help draw us out of ego. So ego is the I am. And it's interesting that the I is also, in English anyway, the number one. Feeling that I am a singularity, I'm a single thing, I'm an entity, I'm an individual. Whereas in fact, we're actually always two. I'm a left side and a right side. And these are sort of always a little bit in conflict. They're sort of repelling each other, but they're also tugging at each other, like two brothers that are constantly squabbling, two children. So we want to feel the centrifugal force, the tendency of these two sides to pull away from each other. And we want to encourage that. Feel these two pockets here. It's really the tendons that come up and not sure where they join on, pubic bone probably. And then let's just stand. So just trying to just get down. And then let's just breathe that. Really tightening that like a sheet of rubber that holds the two sides together. And then here, just letting them stretch apart. So if you do the reverse breathing, it's a little bit stronger. So if you breathe in as you bring the hands together, so you can then feel that real pull. This is the centripetal, balancing the tendency of the two legs to pull away from each other. I want these two forces both to strengthen. Now let's just come up. Now the circles. So I reach out and I reach behind. So there's this point at the end of this turn to the left where my fingers are pointing towards the back wall. And then I turn back to the right. And I allow this hand to drop down. I'm trying to establish this hollow here. So you can either scoop into that or you can just go past it and sweep out the knee. So I'm reaching up and out. And then as I turn the hand over, I let the hand drop down and brush past the knee. So I want to get the hand down at least as low as my knee. There's a sense that I'm reaching out and taking the person's upper body down into my lower body. Feel the shoulder really come away from the spine at the end of this turn. And then the other arm. Try and keep the weight mainly in the opposite leg. If I bring too much weight into my left foot, then this joint will close up a bit. Just want to keep it open whilst I do the two arms singly. And then just both our hands together. And these pushing apart. And now let's just turn it. Try and feel the turn generated by the action of the feet on the ground rather than something that's happening here. So this foot is now pulling me. It's like the turn here stretches this leg and then it pulls by rounding out with the knee. The body works best when the muscles are stretched tight. So we need to be able to do something with our mind to make the muscles contract to that point of stretched tightness. And that's just spirit. Again here, if it's going to become knocking the gates of life, then this hand strikes my belly on the way back in. It's not this. I mean, it can be, obviously, but we're just trying to get this happening. We're just trying to get that sense of yielding as being as much me reaching out to go behind the person as it is me retreating to get away from them. So here I'm going behind the person and bringing them in. And I haven't even turned back the other way yet. Feel the 2 feet. Those Giacometti figurines, the really skinny men with the really big feet, I always think of them. So that my foot is just really big and heavy, stuck on the ground. All feet, really. So the point where you're touching your world, your feet on the ground, the soles of your feet, that's the really important part of you. And now, feeling those 2 big feet. So that's what you are really. You're really just these 2 feet on the ground from which your legs and arms stem upwards. And any sense of me, any I, is just the resonance between these 2, like an interference pattern. It's just energy. It's not a thing in itself. A tremble between these 2 sides that are always squabbling. Feel the centrifugal and the centripetal. You don't need to turn for that. So centrifugal is just a fleeing away from the center. So this feeling that this side is wanting to reach out there here, this side is wanting to reach out here. And just to give me any sense of self, I need to tighten up in the middle. But it's a tightness that stretches the tension so that it can really resonate, and like a guitar string, it needs to be tight, otherwise it's not going to make any sound. And we develop the centripetal with the breathing exercises. And we develop the centrifugal by just standing and riding horse with maybe the legs a little bit wider than you're used to. I just want a real sense that this side is just sliding down here. This side is just sliding down here. And something is just holding on for dear life in the middle. So the more these two sides can try and drift away from each other, the bigger my range. But I want to make sure I fill that range. So for that, you really need to be open across the sacrum. So this feeling of slipping here and slipping here, it has to happen because the sacroiliacs have sort of sprung open. And that just requires an intensification of the spirit. It's not this relaxation that's just a flattening. It's ping, something pings open. And you find yourself on your outside edges, your sacrum is really wrenched apart. And you just feel as though you're in danger or you're ready, really ready for a potential danger. So what will spring this open is just the sinking, just something inside you, just being willing to get down further than you're used to. Whatever we're used to, we're basically brought into the ego. We've incorporated it in our sense of self. So if I can just sink deeper than I'm used to, then these points here will just spring open and suddenly I'll become these resonating pair rather than just this me that's held together by my sense of who I am. And so it's not really the pain in the legs that's the limiting factor. It's just the willingness to wake up. Because when you really sink and you spring open, you're incredibly awake. And now let's just do something different. What we were doing with the arms, reaching out behind and then bringing it in. But the same thing with the leg. Reach out and then just go down with the foot and then just bring myself into it by continuing the circle. So I'm basically just creating a circle like this with my foot. So up the inside, try and get it at least as high as the knee and then just send it out and then bring it down and then scoop with the foot and that will bring the other foot up. Same thing here. So this foot comes up and then I reach out and then the foot pulls towards the other foot, which will draw me into it. So it's difficult with the balance, obviously. So when you put the foot down, put your toes down. So I have to move the body this way a little bit to balance the weight of the leg that's going out. Otherwise, I'll come onto the inside edge and ruin it all. And now here, just really feel it is that little toe edge, that outside edge that's scooping the ground and drawing me across. So it's a bit like opening a mouth. It's like here, wow. And then you close the mouth. So it's got that same feeling as when you really open your mouth wide, almost to scream. These two holes here, so the circle splits into two. When that happens, then you get movement. So that's what I would call single weighted. So when the one has split into two. So this desire to straighten the legs and come back up on high, from which you can observe and judge the world. That's pure ego. So sinking and just getting down, especially into like the hips. Imagine you've got really thick hip bones. It's really splitting at the sacrum. So really getting down into those bones and really feeling the split here. That's what brings us out of ego and into the world of spirit. So then it's the spirit that keeps you together, that keeps the two sides in some sort of unity and turns you into this incredibly responsive and energetic machine. So John always used to say, you're not at your best when things are going your way. You should be at your best when suddenly you're confronted with a situation you have no experience for, and you just have to sink into it, spring out of yourself, and just manage it. That's when you see what you're made of. And of course, we do everything nowadays to try and prevent that sort of event from ever occurring, especially with our children. You know, we know deep down that what develops character is difficulty, and yet that's the one thing we try to shield our children from. And now let's try this little walk. So the same idea as bringing the foot out and sending it out and pulling it in, but now using it to walk rather than simply move from side to side. So I'm going to bring my foot up, and then I'm going to send it out, and then I'm going to touch the ground as far away from myself as I can, but continue the circle. I'm going to use that foot to pull and then this foot comes up. I lift it up and I send it out, and then I pull into myself. So as I pull into the new foot, this heel just comes off the ground like a runner. You see someone like running the mile, their heel actually hits their bum here, and then you just take the knee out. Now the knee does a circle, the knee goes out. If you watch those African runners, especially the ones that run barefoot, this is the sort of action that they have. So striking the ground with the front of the foot, but pulling at the same time. And it's only really when I come in, when I bring my weight into the foot, that the heel goes down in any solid way. Feel how the foot goes on the ground. Toes go down first, and then it's like you come around the outside edge, around the heel, and scoop. like this. So I'm containing the foot as I come into it. I start off in the toes and slowly come into the heel. So we have to really delay the weight transfer. So you're staying in the back foot as long as you can. Let's just try a narrow stance, so just shoulder width. But again, with this feeling that you can sink and you can widen between the knees. And now let's just figure of 8 around the waist, the hips, the feet. Feeling the transfer of the weight. So as I turn here, I'm coming into the heel, and then I come around the outside edge through the toes. So basically the opposite way around the circle that we did when we did the stepping just previous. So I have one circle going this way, which is my visualization of the figure of 8. And then I have another circle going this way. So I'm going around this foot this way as I turn towards it. And as I leave this foot, there's a sense of this happening. So the same that we had with the stepping. So when we have 2 circles, each going the other way, then that's basically a figure of 8. So now we can just split the foot up. So I'm going around this way. So just a simple circle like this. But now here, as I come out here, I just want the feeling that my heel has caught the ground. So this is like the back leg. So this is when my right leg is behaving as a back leg. And when it's behaving as a front leg, the circle just goes the other way around like this. So if I put the 2 together, it's like I'm going around the toes here and then really turn away to catch the heel here and then back around the toes. Trying to feel the figure of 8, not simply as this simple trace that's doing this, but as actually two sort of realities, like front foot reality and back foot reality, that are somehow trying to accommodate each other. So I'm going around the toes, and then I just continue this turn, like going around the bottom of the figure of eight. The temptation is to go over the top and then just flick the hand over like this to get the bottom of the figure of eight. Same as when we did this here. But if we want to make the bottom part of the figure of eight meaty, then I need to really scoot down and under with that. And that's just me circling around my heel. Just using the figure of eight to unify the upper and the lower body. So we've worked on unifying the left and the right. So here I'm going around the heel and then back up. So we want the figure of eight, rather than it being something that I have imposed with my visualizing mind, it's just something that sort of just pops out of the mix. You sort of notice it only because these two circuits have sort of coordinated sufficiently for them to average as a figure of eight. So, but it's always coming in and out of the mix. So it's round the toes, round the heel, round the toes, round the heel. So there's these two realities, upper and lower body. And we tend to ignore the lower body, but we really want that to be more dominant than the upper body. So the upper body is like this sort of fancy detail, almost superficial. And the lower body is really meaty, substantial. Just widen it a little bit. You basically just have to do anything to get into the legs, because we really hate it. Remember Paul Robinson, the great bodybuilder, the guy that lifted 6 tons? So he always used to say, if anyone tells you that they enjoy squats, they're either lying or they're doing them wrong. So we don't like getting into the legs. So here's like I'm looping my head in the top circle, and then here I'm really getting around the foot with the bottom circle. And then just figure of eighting. Now let's just squat. Not only can we get down easily, we relish being down here. So whenever I do it with my students, I say, let's squat, and there's this groan of apathy, really. But then as soon as they're down here and they've just moved around a little bit, they're sprung open and they're just a lot more awake. It's like an awakeness that you can't achieve any other way. Basically, to thrive in civilized society, you need to be dead. Your spirit needs to be really sort of low key. So, because when your spirit is up and it's fierce, then it's like you just cut through all of that nonsense. Heel out. So just stretching, just finding a way of getting lower and just stressing the body close to the ground. And then just do a series of like 10. So 1, and then just bringing these up. And just supporting a bit of your weight with your arms. Allow the arch of the arms to establish itself. And then just slowly rock back into the feet. Feel the feet with the same sort of sensitivity that your hands have. There's a nice exercise I do with my students. I just get them in partners, just facing each other, standing up, the legs a little bit bent. And then one will just reach for the hand of the other and just lift it and cradle it really gently and softly. And then I just say, okay, so just feel how sensitive and good your hands feel. And now just try and get the feet on the ground to feel the same way. Same way we can touch the ground really lightly and sensitively. We want the feet to feel the same on the ground. So let's just bring the weight forwards once more. And then just slowly rock back. Let the heels descend really lightly. So it's almost like there's a really thin cushion of air between the soles of your feet and the ground. And you're really conscious of the instep. So the parts of your foot that aren't on the ground. So your instep between the toes, between the front pad of the foot and the pad of each toe. And then just coming up. So when you put the foot down, it's just so delicate and you're really pulling yourself into the foot. So it's not putting the foot down and just pushing the weight in with the weighted foot. It's like you're really careful. You put the foot down. So the front of your foot, the front pad, and then the toes have to be really capable. They're feeling, but then they also pull. And so I bend the leg to draw myself into it. So as I bend my leg, this gap here opens up. So this is the yielding space, if you like, in the legs. The same as this is the yielding space in the arms. So when I put my foot down, I'm drawing myself into it like this, opening here. So let's just practice that just by going backwards and forwards. I want to transfer my weight by yielding. To yield is basically the straight becoming round. So you're creating a hole. So the straight arm doesn't have a hole, but as soon as you curve it, it's implying a circle. And you can think of that as the hole. So my weight is in the back leg. Now, in order to start this making a hole, to start my legs widening out, so it's not just the space between my knees that's getting bigger. I'm really sinking to open these two spaces here. So the same way when we were in like the wide riding horse, it just really opens here. So I've got my weight in the back foot, and then I just open my knees, and I want that to be sufficient to draw me into the front foot. It's like I open up and the front leg just draws me into it. And then I open here, but again, just by pushing the two knees apart, and then I get drawn across there. The deep riding horse is very important because it just means that it's quite simple to sink and open your legs like this. It's not an ordeal. It's almost a pleasure. So I just want to feel that opening. It's like a breakage, like something in you just snaps, just breaks, and ooh. something just opens out, but the openness is contained. It's got like a limit to it. You can think of it in various ways. You can think of the action of the knee. This knee is going out. And you can use the hand to help brush the knee. So it's basically brush, knee and push. So coming into the front leg for brush, knee and push, but also just bringing the arm up into ward off. So when I do ward off left, for example, I've stepped with this foot and then I just drop the hand and it just swings up as I come into this leg. And also holding the ball. But it all requires me to really delay my weight transfer. I have to stay in the front foot until this leg is really screaming for me to come into it. So another way you can sort of stimulate it is just lift the heel of the foot that you're going to come into. Let's just try just opening it up first. And now just lift the heel a little bit. So when I lift this back heel, it just stimulates this. Again, I'm lifting the heel. It's as though I've sunk. I brought my foot up instead of bringing my hip down. And so this point here opens up. And that's sufficient to actually start drawing me into the leg. And then here with the front foot, I just lift the heel. And that starts the tug of me moving across. So 1. You can do this all the way through the form. So every time you transfer your weight from one foot to another, you can just lift the heel of the empty leg and that will start you moving across softly. Yeah, so we have to be able to get the hand lower than the knee. Otherwise it won't really work. Bring it to riding horse again. These are really open. This is really together. feeling this like a mouth, like, wow, you're opening. So the hip sort of rises a little in order to drop down into the foot. So if I'm using these holes to move myself, then it's very hippie. Heaven forbid. So let's just try a bit of the hip exercise. So toes in. When you've got a wide stance, then don't worry too much about getting your outside edges parallel. So all of these rules are really tendencies. They're sort of elastic pulls. So there's lots of rules that contradict each other. A bit like the circle going around the foot this way and then the circle going around the foot the other way. Everything's playing against everything else. And we just want to feel that. So it's not a rigid position. It's slipping in and out all the time. Moving the hips, so swinging the tail. But the tail is really important. So your sense of humor is in your tail. Now just feel it hanging heavily down. And now let's just finish by just picking the foot up by extending the tail. So I want my tail to swing around the foot with this circle. And as it swings, it reaches down so that by the time it's ready to lift this foot off the ground, the feeling is that my tail, tip of my tail has got underneath the foot. Just want to feel the tail almost like an arm. It can reach. So here it can reach down the leg and just grip the ground so the other foot can come off with a sense of real spirit. So the word I use is meretricious, so like a prostitute, like someone that's just trying to seduce, but in quite a coarse, camp way. So something is looping down my leg, but from my tail. First of all, you've got to relax it so it can hang, but then you've got to be able to direct it. So what John would have really got into the eyebrows, because like when the eyebrows lift, then your tail rises. So I'm doing something with my sort of facial expression, at least inside. For a moment, you're really sticking your bum out. You're getting your tail to go behind, and then it starts lowering, and that pulls your bum in. So by the time this knee is off the ground, pointing the tail back, and then just getting it to drop down, pulling my bum in and under. And then you can just get the figure of 8 in the foot. So now my tail following the figure of 8. So from my big toe around the heel, around the front of the foot, and that really grabs the ground so that this foot can come up. Catching the heel, catching the front of the foot. So let's just finish. So standing to attention. Something in you just doesn't want to straighten your legs. And if you do straighten your legs, you're straightening them to stretch something that is then going to pull back into a bentness. So I can straighten the legs, but that pulls me down even more strongly. There's always this double figure of 8 going on. Feel the thymus. Thymus and head, and eros and belly.